And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist John Cowen with your aviation forecast. We'll start off taking a look at flying weather across the state for this weekend. On Saturday, we have several areas of IFR, mainly due to a low pressure center in the Gulf of Alaska that continues to bring weather up into the interior. IFR expected across the North Slope, as is typical for this time of year. IFR is mainly going to be confined to the central interior portions of the Alaska range, across the northern Gulf Coast as well, where we have onshore flow bringing a lot of rain and low ceilings. We also have another low pressure center that's working its way east across the Aleutians, bringing IFR conditions with that as well. As we get into Saturday afternoon, IFR continues to spread east along the eastern Aleutians, approaching Kodiak Island. IFR continues across the northern Gulf Coast. We do have some clearing across the interior, though, as we do have a weak ridge that's going to be moving in between these two low pressure centers, and that's going to kind of help clear things out across the southwestern portions of the interior. Panhandle starting to look a little better Saturday afternoon as well, with some clearing from the south, and then by Sunday morning we get another shot of precipitation into southeast, so expect IFR conditions, especially across the higher terrain near the Canadian border. IFR moving into Kodiak Island as well. Still generally marginal conditions across much of the interior, some clearing from the east as we get some high pressure building into that area, and IFR continues across the North Slope and into the Brooks Range. And then finally for Sunday afternoon, widespread IFR across the Gulf Coast. However, by Sunday afternoon, we do expect high pressure from the north is going to become the dominant feature, so we do expect clearing across much of the interior. Taking a look at our passes for Saturday, Anaktuvik Pass starting out the day in VFR with some marginal conditions moving in, expecting marginal conditions as you get towards the north entrance as well. Similar story for Adigan, only starting out in marginal and getting into IFR territory as we have a weak front that's going to be moving through that area on Saturday. Taking a look at Lake Clark and Merrill passes, expecting marginal conditions throughout the day, although we could be in and out of VFR with clearing conditions, especially later in the afternoon. Same story for Rainy Pass, predominantly marginal. Windy Pass starting out the day in marginal, and then some clearing expected later in the afternoon. Same story for Isabel, marginal, with improving conditions throughout the day. Mentasta looking to have VFR conditions all day. Tanita Pass, VFR, with some marginal conditions expected near the east entrance, especially earlier in the morning. Portage Pass, expecting VFR conditions for Saturday as well. Beautiful flying weather with some marginal stuff on the eastern side as you get into Prince William Sound. And then for Chilkoot and White Passes, starting out the day in IFR with some improving conditions later on in the evening. Freezing levels are going to be actually pretty high relative to this time of year across much of the state. You can see a big warm sectors come into southwest Alaska with freezing levels well above the surface over a good chunk of the state. 2,000 feet is what we're expecting near much of south central and the northern Gulf Coast, with 2,000 feet again for much of the Panhandle. Taking a look at our icing forecast, we can expect areas of potential for moderate icing across the eastern and central Aleutians, about 4,000 to 12,000 feet on that. 6,000 to 12,000 feet is what we can expect for some areas of moderate icing for the Panhandle. And then as we get farther into the interior, freezing levels drop a little bit, so we're expecting areas of potential moderate between 2,000 to 10,000 feet. Taking a look at our jet stream, we have a very strong jet that's set up over the Gulf of Alaska up to 125, 130 knots across that area, but that's over the open ocean. Very light winds across the Panhandle, much of the mainland. Fairly calm in the upper levels, taking a look at 9,000 feet. Again, fairly calm across much of the interior. The stronger winds are going to be well offshore, although we do have some stronger winds across southeastern Alaska, the northern portions of the Panhandle, around 45 knots or so out of the south. And then coming down to 3,000 feet, we again have a core of stronger winds in the lower levels, about 45 to 50 knots across much of the North Slope. Otherwise, the interior of Alaska and southeast looking pretty calm. And then across the Aleutians, we do have some gustier winds up to around 45 knots out of the north across the central Aleutians. Turbulence forecast showing those areas of stronger winds surface to about 3,000 feet is what we would expect for some areas of moderate turbulence across the central Aleutians. Same story here near Kodiak Island later in the day, getting into some of those stronger winds. And then surface to about 4,000 feet is what we're looking at for the northern Panhandle, northern Gulf Coast area, and then some isolated moderate turbulence across the Brooks Range, surface to about 4,000 feet in that area. And that'll wrap up our aviation forecast. I'm meteorologist John Cowen.